Hi. As we agreed in the lecture, I planned to make some video reviews for you to cover what we already had in the lecture, the autonomic nervous system, and we'll also try to make another one that is for the endocrine system. Now let's start with the autonomic nervous system. As we discussed together, that the autonomic nervous system is essentially a motor system that you have no direct or conscious control over. So there isn't really a sensory component, unlike what we had previously in the central nervous system or the somatic nervous system. We always discussed of afferent and efferent fibers. Here in the autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, we only have efferent fibers, and these are autonomic fibers, but as you will see later, the autonomic nervous system is also capable of hijacking or piggybacking on the somatic nervous system, and it utilizes the afferent fibers, which are the sensory fibers, and those will result in activation of your autonomic nervous system. So let's talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system here. The autonomic nervous system, as I indicated, it will be responsible for motor neurons, for organs and muscles that you have no control over. Like what? Like the smooth fibers, the smooth muscle fibers, your intestine, your blood vessels, your iris. None of these you can move consciously. And the cardiac muscle, and also our glands like sweat glands and our salivary glands and intestinal glands. So that's what the autonomic nervous system would innervate. The autonomic nervous system will make adjustments in order to ensure optimal support of your body activities. Like what? Like adjusting your body temperature. If it senses that your temperature is going out of range, that it's going too high or too low, so it will make such adjustments. It will also adjust your blood volume. If it recognizes that you lost a lot of blood or you have been dehydrated somehow, and now your blood pressure is going down, so it will start to adjust that. And all of these adjustments are very, very critical. But it's not just that, it also controls your bowel movements, controls your bladder emptying, and controls your sexual activity. All of these things, as you will see in a short bit, are covered by our autonomic nervous system. And as we agreed already, the autonomic nervous system operates under subconscious control. You don't have a feeling or cerebral control over the actions of the autonomic nervous system. We have other names for it. We can also call it involuntary nervous system, because it's involuntary. That's another word for autonomic. And because it's moving mostly our viscera, we can call it general visceral motor system. Either way, it's just different names for the autonomic nervous system. So here is the division of the entire nervous system in our body. We have the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Now the peripheral nervous system can divide into sensory division and motor division. This is what we are concerned with in this lecture, that the motor division will be divided or subclassified into somatic nervous system. This is the one that you use to flex your muscles or to make a grip in your hand or move your foot. The autonomic nervous system, however, you have no control over, as we agreed. And we will have from that, we will have two divisions. One of them is called the sympathetic system, and sympathetic, as you will see later, it means it's coordinated action of many organs. That is why we call it sympathetic. And we will get into that later on. And then there is the parasympathetic. The sympathetic, as you will see later, it's associated with fight or flight. It's when you're angry, when you're fighting when you're nervous, the sympathetic nervous system will be active. The parasympathetic system is the relaxed, you're digesting, you're whining, and you're relaxing. That is where the parasympathetic division. Understanding those principles about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems will allow you later on to understand the actions of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic division. When you imagine yourself being angry, or when you imagine yourself being chased by a bear, what are the things that you expect to find? That you will be breathing heavily, your heart is pounding, your blood pressure is rising, your hands are cold, whereas in the parasympathetic system, just after finishing a really good meal and you're watching TV, what do you think will be there? You're relaxed, you're breathing not so heavily, and your blood pressure is not high, your heart is not pounding, and maybe you're even reading a couple of books that requires near accommodation of your eyes. And so all that would be stimulated by the parasympathetic system, and we will get into that in a short bit. Now, the two systems, the somatic and autonomic nervous systems, will differ in quite a bit. The effectors, what are they affecting? The pathways, and the target organs. So let's talk about each of them. We agreed already on the effectors that the somatic nervous system will affect the skeletal muscles. Essentially, most of these muscles are attached one way or the other to bones, most of them. And whereas the autonomic nervous system will be supplying muscles that are either smooth muscle fibers, or, like we agreed, smooth muscle fibers, cardiac muscle fibers, or glands. Now, the pathways are different, and we're going to discuss that in much more details in the few next slides. And the organ response to neurotransmitters is different between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. So let's start with the effectors. As I said just a minute ago, the effectors here for the somatic nervous system will be the skeletal muscles. And for the autonomic nervous system, we'll have the cardiac muscles, smooth muscles, and the glands. Now, the pathways, as you all remember, we have for the motor pathway of the brain, if we just take aside now the cranial nerves for a second, we have the soma that is sitting on the inside the ventral horn of your spinal cord, and from there it sends an axon, a fairly long axon, to stimulate the muscle that you want to stimulate. So it's only one fiber that's coming out from the central nervous system, from the spinal cord, and the same thing really also occurs for the cranial nerves. The only difference is that they're not arising from the ventral horn, but they are arising from the cranial nerve nuclei. These are inside the brainstem in particular. So at any event, the